Alright, what is up you guys, and welcome back to the Progressive Skills in English Level 3 coursebook. In today's recording we're going to be going over reading, so let's hop right in. Here we have exercise A, reviewing vocab. So all the words below are different kinds of people, so what's the full word in each case? So one's pretty obvious, we have friend. Two will be colleague, okay? So colleague will be written like so. Colleague, and then we have neighbor, right? Oh, let me get rid of that EI. Okay, so friend, colleague, neighbor. Four will be acquaintance. Okay, so acquaintance. And then we have five. We'll probably say relative. Okay, so relative. And six, adolescent. So adolescent. Okay, so friend, colleague, neighbor, acquaintance. Actually, I did not write that correctly. Give me a second. U-A-I-N-T-A-N-C. Acquaintance, relative, and adolescent. Now let's move on. Here we have exercise B, identifying parts of speech in context. We're going to write whether a word in context is a verb or a noun next to some of the words in italics here. So, in some cultures, people usually make a promise after apologizing. So, guys, is the word promise a verb or a noun in this context? That's correct. It's a noun, so we'll write an N here. Okay? Two, some people say that you shouldn't accept blame after a car accident. Blame here is also a noun. Okay? It really just depends on the context of the word in the subject. Three, Bergman and Casper support the theory that apologizing is culturally determined. Support here is actually a verb, right? Because Bergman and Casper both support, and that's a verb, okay? Several pieces of research point to the same conclusion. So several pieces of research point that this is also a verb, okay? In some cultures, it is not polite to excuse your behavior. Excuse me. Five is also a verb. The word excuse here is also a verb. Three kinds of memory are kept in the long-term store. And here it's also a noun. Okay, so store here is a noun. Okay, so again, noun, promise is a noun here, blame is a noun, support is a verb, point is a verb, excuse is a verb here, and finally store is a noun. Okay, now let's move on. Here we have exercise C, understanding new words in context. Okay, so we're going to complete this text right here with some of the words from the vocab box, and we might have to make some necessary changes. So here we have blame, excuse behavior, make a promise, obey, parent, point to a conclusion, rebel, respond, response, stimulus, support a theory, transaction, unexpected, wife, workmate. Okay? So let's go. Here we have relationships with other people are never simple. Dash often have problems with their children. This one's pretty simple. We'll say parents often have problems with their children. Young children usually dash their parents. We'll say obey, right? But adolescents often will say rebel. Husbands often say, my dash doesn't understand me. So in this case, we'll say wife. My wife doesn't understand me. Dash have problems with each other. You can probably say, do we have workmates? Yes, we do. So we'll say workmates have problems with each other. We can often understand the issues between two people by analyzing the verbal dash or conversations. We'll say transactions. So transactions, okay, or conversations. A lot of conversations have the form of stimulus dash. Alright, so do we have stimulus response here? We have stimulus, so basically stimulus response, right, is your generic response, okay? So a lot of conversations have the form of stimulus response. So in other words, one person says something, which is in this case the stimulus, right? Oh, wrote that wrong. Stimulus. And the other person, what's going to be, you guys? Simply responds, okay? So responds, okay? Sometimes response is expected. We know the person will reply in that way, but sometimes it is unexpected, okay? Here, it is unexpected. An unexpected response may reveal a problem with the relationship. So here, let's take an example. So let's say someone asks you, right? Let's say, for example, you're a teenager, right? You're a parent and you have, for example, a 17 or a 16-year-old. So he says, where are my black shoes, right? Just a simple question. What he expects as an answer is just a simple, where are my black shoes? So they're just inside the front door. That's the expected response, the normal one, right? But the unexpected response is when you say things like, why don't you ever put things away? Why do you always keep your room untidy? And I think we all know how this can turn into a problem with the relationship, right? So this is the expected response and the unexpected response. All right. So before we move on to the next page, I wanted to discuss some questions with you guys. So why do you guys think that children often obey parents while adolescents or teenagers, they just often rebel them? Like they don't always get along, they don't always see eye to eye. Why do you guys think that's so? I mean, I'll leave this up to you, but for me personally, I'd say that a kid is a kid, right? He doesn't see much. All he cares about is playing, eating, candy. You get the idea. But a teenager usually has his own point of view, right? He sees the world from his own two eyes instead of his parents', right? He might be right, he might be wrong. Nobody knows, but even for the simple stuff, you don't want to sweat the small stuff as a parent, right? You caught your teenager doing something bad, it's really not a good idea to start shouting and making a mess and punishments and grounding, right? It's really not that big of a deal. Because this can cause unnecessary stress on top of all the stress that your teenager faces, both biologically and socially, right? So that's why I think that a lot of teenagers or adolescents don't see eye to eye with their parents. All right, let's go to question 2. Why do you guys think that husbands and wives often argue a lot, or what do they usually argue about? So here's actually something that's really interesting. 9 times out of 10, when someone in the relationship is really mad, the other person usually doesn't even notice or doesn't bat an eye until communication is in the making. Let me explain. So let's say, for example, you have a wife, right, that gets really mad when you spill your coffee, right? Like, so let's say, for example, you're making coffee and you spill some sugar when adding it to your coffee, right? Or drop some sugar crystals. It really doesn't matter, right? Let's say it's a habit to you now, like you're so bad at adding sugar that you just kind of accepted it as that you just simply suck, right? Not that big of a deal to you, but to her, she thinks now that you're doing this on purpose, right? And she gets even madder, and now she bottles it inside until something totally unrelated happens, or she could let it out all onto you on the spot. Meanwhile, you, as a person or a husband in this case, didn't even notice it or thought about it twice because you simply thought, hey, I suck, it's fine, right? So there's a saying that always goes when you're about to get married is choose your battles correctly. Again, like the whole teenagers and parents thing, you don't want to sweat the small stuff, right? Keep the small stuff, and if there's a problem, talk about it. I'm talking if there's a big problem in the relationship, talk about it. It's like they say, communication is key in this case. Okay? Now let's move on to the final question before we move on here. I know it took quite the time here. Here we have, what do workmates often disagree about? And this one's not as bad as a relationship between a husband and wife, or a teenager and a parent, because your workmate is not family, right? He's just simply someone that you spend a third of your day with. Similar to a friend at school, right? So what do workmates often disagree about? You guys can disagree about the way you do work, right? You might disagree about things, if someone takes a lot longer to finish work, like for example being lazy, someone trying to make trouble, basically. Because there are a lot of different people when it comes to work, right? So workmates, again, might not see things eye to eye, especially when it comes to work. And that is what disagreement can be about. Okay? So that was exercise C, you guys. Now let's move on to the next page. Alright, so here we have exercise A, activating ideas. Read the title of the article on the opposite page. What is strange about the title? So let's take a look at the title. Here we have, are you a parent, an adult, or a child? What do you guys think is actually strange about this? So I'd definitely say that it's weird to ask if you are a parent or an adult, because almost always, I'm talking about like 95% of the time, a parent is always an adult, okay? Someone legally over the age of 18. So I think that's a little strange. Okay? Based on that article, what do you think the article is going to be talking about, or is going to be about? I'll definitely say it's about people's problems because of relationships with other people. Okay? That's just based on the title itself. Now let's go to exercise B, using illustrations to predict contents. Here, let's take a look. What do we have? Alright, so here we have some illustrations, right? Here we have two figures, an example of a PC transactions, or a PC transaction here. A PC, obviously P stands for parent and C is for child, right? And this is an example of a mixed transaction between an adult, parent, and child. So let's take a look at the questions. Here we have, look at figure 1, so we'll be mainly focusing on this here. Excuse me. So are these statements true or false? The husband gives the stimulus and the child gives the response. Looking at it, gives the stimulus and the child. Okay, so it's actually wrong because the husband, or in this case, parent, can also be a wife. So it's not necessarily only the husband. So this will be false. Okay? The stimulus is a statement by the husband. We'll say true, right? Because in this case, the husband is giving out the stimulus to the child. So this will be true. In the caption, P stands for parent and C stands for child. Yep, we already said that. The caption is right here. So we got it. True. A transaction in this case is a stimulus and a response. So let us check stimulus, response. Yep, so true again. The article will be about transactions between children. False. It'll be about different transactions between parents, adults, and children. Okay? That was using illustrations to predict content. Let's move on. Here we have using topic sentences to predict content. Let us take a look here. Alright, so we're actually going to read this now, and then we'll go back to exercise C. So here we go. Are you a parent, an adult, or a child? Eric Byrne was born in 1910 in Montreal, Canada. He moved to New York to train as a psychiatrist in the 1930s. After practicing psychiatry in that city, he joined the Army Medical Corps in 1943. There was a strong demand for psychiatrists during the Second World War. At the end of the war, Byrne moved to San Francisco. There, he developed a new idea about psychiatric problems. In 1964, he wrote a book called Games People Play. He found a school, or a type of psychiatry called transactional analysis. He died in California in 1970. In his 1964 book, Byrne stated that people have problems in their lives because of their relationships with other people. Before Byrne made this statement, most psychiatrists believed that all personal problems came from inside the person's head. In other words, problems came from a person's own brain. However, Byrne believed that problems arise because of the transactions or conversations between people. He pointed out that people often play games with their friends, family, and workmates. By making the other person feel worse, they try to feel better about themselves. Nowadays, psychiatrists accept that people play these games. Byrne developed a simple model of the behavior between people. He said that people always behave in one of three ways. They act as a parent, as an adult, or as a child. He explained that a parent can try to look after another person, or try to control him/her. A child can obey orders and do what he/she is told, or rebel. We can see an example of a PC transaction in Figure 1. As you can see in this case, the husband behaves as a parent and the wife behaves as the child. For example, the husband might say, "Why did you spend so much money last month?" And the wife might respond, "I'm sorry, it won't happen again." However, the same husband and wife could change roles in a different transaction. According to Byrne, people can play roles in this way for years without any problems. However, problems often arise in transactions. For example, difficulties appear if both people in a transaction want to be the parent or both want to be the child. Problems also arise if one person wants to behave like an adult and the other person responds as a parent or a child. For example, in Figure 2, perhaps the wife says, "I've got to get some new shoes for the children." And the husband replies, "Why do you spend so much money?" Right, so that was the text, you guys. Now let's go to exercise C here. Excuse me. Read the topic sentences from the article. Which paragraph will contain more explanation of the illustration? And I believe that was paragraph 4. We can see an example of a PC transaction. Yep, so A will be 4. More information about Byrne's model of behavior between people. So we know that Byrne had his own model, but in which paragraph? Yep, so here we have it. Paragraph 3, Byrne developed a simple model. So 3, okay. More information about problems with transactions. Problems often arise in transactions, so that's paragraph number 5. more information about Burns' idea. I think this one was actually 2. Yeah, Burns stated that people have problems. Yeah, so more about his idea will be number 4. And more information about Burns' life. This is 1 because here we have Eric Berne was born in 1910 in Montreal, Canada. So 1. Okay, so that was the using the topic sentences, you guys. Again, paragraph 4, more explanation of the illustration. 3, more information about Burns' model of behavior between people. 5, more information about problems with transactions. 4, more information about Burns' idea. And 1, more information about Burns' life. Okay, that was exercise C. Now let's move on. We have exercise D, understanding the text. Read the sentences, and what do we got to do? Find information in the text to complete each sentence. Okay, so Eric Berne was from, take a look, was born in 1910 in Montreal, Canada. So we'll say he was from Montreal. Okay? He first practiced psychiatry in, I think it was New York? Yep, he moved to New York to train as a psychiatrist. So we'll say in New York. Okay? Oh, let me add a space here. Add space. Okay, so 3, we have Berne developed his ideas in, where was it? I think it was somewhere around San Francisco, maybe? Let me check. Yes, Berne moved to San Francisco. There he developed a new idea. Yes, so developed his ideas in San Francisco. Okay. 4, Berne believed that personal problems come from, I think it was something along the lines of people's relationships with other people. Because of their relationships with other people. So we'll say Berne believed that personal problems come from people's, wrote that wrong, people's relation. Wow, I cannot write today. People's relationships with other people, right? So Berne believed that personal problems come from people's relationships with other people. Berne thought that sometimes you feel good because I think it was you made somebody feel bad. We'll say yes. They act people by making the other person feel worse. They try to feel better about themselves. So we'll say Berne thought that you sometimes feel good because you have made another person feel bad. Okay? 6, Berne said that people can behave like, oh, this one's pretty simple, can behave like a parent, an adult, or a child. Okay? Let me actually write these in capital. An adult and child. Okay? So Berne said that people can behave like a parent, an adult, or a child. Berne believed that people can switch, he said that people can switch between roles, right? So, between roles. And we'll say between roles, and we'll just say here without problems. Okay? 8, Berne said that problems arrive if I think he said when 2 people try to play the same role, so both want to play that child, or yes, if both people in the transaction want to be the parent or both want to be the child. Okay. So we'll say Berne said that problems arise if both people want to play the same role. Okay? So again, before we move on, Eric Berne was from Montreal. He first practiced psychiatry in New York. Berne developed his ideas in San Francisco. Berne believed that personal problems come from people's relationships with other people. Berne thought that you sometimes feel good because you have made another person feel bad. Berne said that people can behave like a parent, an adult, or a child. Let me write an A here. Or a child. Berne believed that people can switch between roles without problems. And Berne said that problems arise if both people want to play the same role. Okay? So that was exercise D. Now let's move on. What do we have here? Transferring information to the real world. Let us take a look here. Okay, so here we have some transactions below, and we're going to mark each sentence if it's a parent, an adult, or a child. So here we have, you can't go out in that shirt, I'll iron another one for you. Thanks, I don't know what I'd do without you. One is definitely a P, that's a parent for sure. Thanks, I don't know what I'd do without you, that's definitely a child. Okay, so C, or childlike behavior. What shall we do this evening? Let's go to a restaurant. These are simply adult sentences, no problem. I don't know what to wear. I've put some clothes out for you. So I don't know what to wear. That's childlike sentence. I've put some clothes out for you. Again, parent sentence. Where shall we go at the weekend? Why do I have to make all the decisions? So where shall we go at the weekend? This one's simply an adult sentence. Why do I have to make all the decisions? That's definitely a parent question. Okay? So again, parent, child, two adults here talking. Here we have a child and a parent, and adult and parent. Okay? So that was exercise E, you guys. Now let's move on to the next page. Alright, you guys, so here we have exercise A, reviewing vocabulary, match the verbs and the other words to, what was it, make phrases from the article in lesson 2.6. So we're going to be matching the verbs here to these other words to make phrases. Okay, so here we have 1, train dash, so we'll probably say train as a psychiatrist. Right? So train as a psychiatrist. 2, practice, we'll say practice psychiatry. Okay, so trains as a psychiatrist, practice psychiatry. 3, obey an order. Okay, so we'll say obey an order. Then we have 4, join. Excuse me, we'll say join the army. This one's pretty simple. Join the army. Develop, we'll say develop a new idea, right? Found, I think, yeah, a sentence from the article, found a school. So we'll say found a school. Play a role and behave like an adult, okay? So again, train as a psychiatrist, practice psychiatry, obey an order, join the army, develop a new idea, found a school, play a role, and behave like an adult. Okay? So now let's go to exercise. Actually, before we do that, let's take a look at the vocab box. So here we have citizen, encourage, grow or grew up, lifetime, school, surgeon, theorist, theory, training. Okay? So let's take a look at skills check 1 here. Let me open this so you guys can get a better view here. We have skills check 1, fact or theory, right? So we know that articles often contain statements of facts, right? Or a certain fact. So for example, when I say Berne was born in 1910, this is a fact. This is something that indeed happened, okay? And he joined the Army Medical Corps in 1943. This is also a fact. It is something that that has happened, and we have evidence of it 100%, okay? Now, you got to understand that articles also contain theories. So, theories are basically the exact opposite of facts. They are, pieces of information that could either be true or false. So let's take a look. So for example, if I say, Byrne stated that people have problems in their lives because of their relationships with other people. So this particular sentence here means that Byrne had his own theory, right? That people have problems in their lives because of their relationships with other people. At the time, Byrne did not have sufficient evidence to state this as a fact, so this was a theory, okay? One more example is, he said that people always behave in one of 3 ways. Well, before he got sufficient evidence to call this a fact, it was just a theory, and a theory can be right or wrong. It's up to you as someone that looks at these pieces of information and says, hey, I believe this, no, I don't, using your own, logical thinking, okay? So, how do you know if what you're reading is a theory or a fact? Well, if it's a theory, you're always going to find something called introductory verbs. So you always got to look out for introductory verbs such as say, state, explain, point out, believe, think, feel, claim, and maintain. And also look for phrases. These can also be used to express a theory, like according to Byrne, or for Byrne, or in Byrne's opinion, or in your opinion, depends on what you're reading. All right? So again, just before so we don't get lost, to find a theory in a text, right? Look for introductory verbs such as say, that, explain, point out, etc. Also look for phrases such as according to, for someone, in someone's opinion, right? All of these are indications for a theory, okay? Now, you also got to understand that in a text, sometimes there is no introductory verb or phrase. So this will now be up to you to decide if it's a fact or a theory, right? So if I say they act as a parent, as an adult, or as a child, well, I don't have any introductory verbs here or phrases, so this will be up to me now to decide if this is a fact or a theory. I might be wrong, I might be correct, but I have no other choice but to decide if the statement is a fact or theory. Okay? So here, when we're talking about theory in this specific lesson, we're talking about part of Byrne's, or the view of the psychiatrist himself, so in this case Byrne, right, and his view on what is right and what is wrong with people. Okay, so here we have a theory, like part of Byrne's theory that problems came from a person's own brain, right? This is a theory that was believed by Byrne, but it's simply a theory. It doesn't have enough evidence to be claimed as a fact. Problems came from a person's own brain. Okay? So again, remember, theories may be true or false. If they were always true, then they would not be theories. They would simply be a fact. All right? So that was quite long. Hope you got the idea, fact or theory. Now let's go to B2 here. We have these statements are from the article in lesson 2.6. Mark each one with a tick for if it's a fact, or question mark for theory. Okay, so here we have A. Byrne founded a school of psychiatry. Okay, so this one's a fact, right? So Byrne founded a school of psychiatry. We know where it is. We have sufficient evidence, so it's a fact. Okay. Byrne moved to San Francisco. Again, this is a fact. People always behave in one of 3 ways. This is a theory because I don't have sufficient evidence for it. So this will Well, yep. Right, so this will be not a fact. This will be a theory. Byrne died in California in 1970. This is a fact. Okay? People often play games with their friends, family, and workmates. Again, this is a theory that Byrne had in mind, right? That people used to play these games where they annoy friends, family, and workmates. F. People try to feel better by making other people feel worse. Again, this is one of Byrne's many theories. There was a strong demand for psychiatrists during the Second World War. Well, we know this happened, and there's enough evidence for it, so this will be a fact. Okay? So now that we got that out of the way, let's move on. Here, what else do we have? Here we have practicing a new skill. So now we're gonna actually read the text here, and we're gonna try and underline all the theories in this particular text. So here we go, you guys. We have Eric Byrne wrote 8 major books in his lifetime, but the most famous is Games People Play, which he published in 1964. In this book, Byrne said that people behave in one of 3 ways in all transactions. Alright, so based on that first paragraph, we'll say that the part here, so behave in one of 3 ways in all transactions, that's a theory. Okay? So I think we'll choose this part right here. So Byrne said that people behave in one of 3 ways in all transactions. Again, you see, this is a phrase, an introductory phrase. Byrne said, someone said. This indicates that this is a theory. Alright? Byrne grew up in Canada, although his family were from Eastern Europe. Byrne's father was a doctor, and some people say that Byrne's mother encouraged Eric to study medicine. Alright, I'm going to stop right here. So this is actually this part right here. Where is it? Byrne's mother encouraged him to study medicine. And some people say that really means that it's a theory and not a fact, because only some people say, and how can I know if these people are sure or not? Okay? So, some people say that Byrne's mother encouraged him to study medicine. This is a theory. He trained as a doctor and surgeon, then moved into the field of psychiatry. He applied to become a registered psychoanalyst in 1956, but his application was rejected. Many people believe that this rejection affected him deeply as a result. Alright, this part right here. So many people believe that this rejection affected him deeply. Well, many people believe, but there's no evidence to back up this belief. So it's simply, it could be right, could be wrong. I guess we'll never know. So this is a theory. Okay? As a result, he started to develop his own theories of psychoanalysis. So yeah, that's about it. We don't have any more. Well, I'll just add one more thing before we move on. You guys gotta know that we cannot be certain that rejection led to the theory, right? So just a quick note, we cannot be certain. Okay? So that was underlining all the theories in this text here. Okay? Now let's move on. What else do we have? Here we have exercise D, identifying a new skill 2. Read skills check 2. What is the subject of each example sentence? Okay. So here we have prepositional phrases. Alright, so writers often begin sentences with a prepositional phrase. The phrase sometimes ends with a comma, and the subject of the sentence comes next, so right after the comma. But if there's no comma, try to find the end of the prepositional phrase. So if you don't see a comma, try and find the end of that prepositional phrase. For example, let's take an example for prepositional phrases, like if I say, after practicing psychiatry in that city, Byrne joined the the Army Medical Corps in 1943. So after practicing psychiatry in that city, this is called a prepositional phrase. Burn, which is going to be the subject here, by the way, right? So what is the subject of each example sentence? Burn is the first one, okay? Joined the Army Medical Corps in 1943. 2, at the end of the war, okay, comma, so this part right here will be the prepositional phrase. He moved to San Francisco. Again, the subject in this sentence will be he. So burn and he. Alright? Now, let's take a look at statements of theory here, skills check 3. Right, so sometimes statements of theory are introduced. Always look closely at the tense of the introduction and the statement. The different tenses tell you about the theorists and the theory itself. Right, so when looking at the statement of the theory that you're reading or introduced, always take a closer look at the tense of the introduction, right? Is it in past tense? Is it in present, right? These tenses can tell you a lot about the theory itself and also the theorist, which was, in this case, or the previous texts, burn. Okay? Now let's go to exercise E, finding subject and verb in long sentences. Alright, so there is no comma at the end of the prepositional phrases in these sentences. Right, underline the subject and circle the verb. Alright, so we'll say the verb, on 10th May 1910, Eric Byrne was born in Montreal. So was will be the verb, or was born. Alright, can click was alone, so that's that. And what about the subject? So the subject here is pretty simple. It's Eric Byrne. Okay? 2. At the age of 18, Byrne entered McGill University. So at the age of 18, we'll probably add a comma here. Byrne will be, in this case, the will be the subject, and entered will be the verb. I just had a brain freeze. So 3, during his time at university, he wrote for several student newspapers. We'll definitely say he as the subject, and wrote will be the verb for several student newspapers. After graduating from university, we'll probably add a comma here, that's the prepositional phrase. Byrne started to study psychiatry at Yale. So again, Byrne will be the subject, and started will be the verb. Okay? 5. At the university at that time, the professor was Dr. Paul Fettern. Right, so at the university at that time, comma, the professor, so the professor will be the subject, was again, will be the verb, Dr. Paul Fettern. 6. At the end of his training in 1938, Byrne became an American citizen. So at the end of his training in 1938, comma, Byrne will be the subject, became will be the verb here, an American citizen. 7. During Byrne's training in psychiatry, the Second World War started. So the Second World War will be the subject in this case, and started will be the verb. Okay? 8. As a result of the mental problems of soldiers during the war, a large number of psychiatrists were needed by the army at that time. So we'll say, I think, a large number of psychiatrists will be the subject, and were will be the verb, or were needed. 9. At the end of the war in 1945, Byrne went to study in San Francisco. So again, Byrne will be the subject, study in San Francisco. I don't think we have a verb here, guys. So 10. At that time in the San Francisco Psychoanalytic Institute, Erik Erikson was the director. Okay, so we'll say Erik Erikson. Actually, no, we do have it. It's right here. So went will be the verb at number 9. That's my bad. And was the director, or will be the verb here, 10. So let's take a look again. So we have 1, Eric Byrne was the subject, was born was the verb. 2, Byrne was the subject, entered was the verb. He was the subject, wrote was the verb. 4, Byrne, subject, started was the verb. 5, the professor is the subject, and was is the verb. Okay. 6, Byrne will be Byrne is the subject, and became is the verb. 7, the Second World War is the subject, started is the verb. A large number of psychiatrists were needed, right? So a large number of psychiatrists is the subject in this sentence, and were needed is the verb. Byrne will be the subject, went will be the verb, and finally 10, Eric Erickson was is the subject, and is the verb. Okay? So that was exercise E, you guys. Now let's move on, see what we have here. So read skills track 3, already did that. So explain the 3 deductions given in brackets from the tenses in the examples, or in the example sentences. Okay. So let me tell you guys something. So a present tense verb, as in, for example, psychiatrists accept, right? Or shows, or when I say psychiatrists accept, right, this means that the theory in play is still current, meaning that people still believe in the theory, right? For example, we'll probably say, psychiatrists accept that there are 3 moods for people. This is just an example, right? Right off the top of my head. So this shows that the theory at play is still current, and people still believe that it's a theory. It's not wrong, but it's also not correct. However, now, if we go to a past tense verb, so in this case, if I say, as in most psychiatrists believed, this shows that modern psychiatrists or scientists or researchers or students or whoever do not believe in that theory anymore. Okay? So again, if we're in the present tense, right, people still think that that theory is current, right? But if I'm in the past tense, well, that means that that theory is probably debunked, and people either don't believe in it no more, or it's now a fact, right? Moving on to the last example, if I say, for example, Byrne thought, right? This tells us that Byrne is dead, right? But his theory that he was talking about might still be valid. We're still not sure, but it still might be valid, or it might still be valid. Okay? So Byrne thought, or whoever thought, the past tense here tells us that even though this person is gone, the theory is still here until it is debunked or turned into a fact. Okay? So that was exercise F. Now let's move on to exercise G here, using tense to make deductions. So read each sentence. What deductions can you make in each case about the theorist and about the theory? Okay. So 1, people believe that the earth was flat. So we'll say the earth is flat, right? That's the theory itself. We'll say that it's old and it's false. So about the theorist and theory, it's old and false. 2, Aristotle believed that earthquakes were caused by winds under the earth. Well, the theory here is that earthquakes are caused by winds under the earth. We'll say again that this is old and false. Okay? Aristotle thought that we learn by doing. Well, the theory here is we learn by doing. And we'll say that it's true about the theorist. And the theory itself, it's possibly true. After all, I mean, it is a theory. Okay? 4, Piaget said that children go through 4 stages. So the theory here is that children go through 4 stages. So for the theorist, that's true. For the theory itself, it's possibly true. Okay? 5. Pavlov's stated that you can make people behave in particular ways. Well, the theory here is that you can make people behave in particular ways. So in this case, we'll say about the theorist is that it's true, and about the theory itself is that it's possibly true. Okay? 6. Al Gore says that man is the cause of global warming. So the theory here is that man is the cause of global warming. Well, for the theorist himself, it's true, and for the theory, we'll say it's possibly true, although I don't know how you can say it's not true anymore at this point. I think it's a fact, but hey, we'll say possibly true. Okay, you guys, so that was exercise G. Now, let's move on to the next page. Alright, you guys, so here we have exercise A, reviewing vocabulary. Study each sentence. What does the word in bold mean in both cases? So here we have some sentences, and we're going to have to find out what the word or words in bold mean in each case, right? So 1, here we have, he trained to be a train driver, right? So the first trained here means studied, right? So studied to be a train driver. So the second train here, second word in bold, means it's a simple transport method, right? Train, right? Just like a bus, just like a car, etc. Alright? 2, she played Ophelia in the play Hamlet. So she played here means acted. Okay? So the first played means acted in the play Hamlet. Obviously, the play Hamlet is a kind of literature. Okay? 3, he found the school that Byrne founded. So, he found, sorry. Found here means discovered. Okay, so he discovered that the school that Byrne founded. That Byrne founded here means that Byrne started. Okay? So the first found means discovered, and the second one means started. Right? 4, Byrne's School of Psychiatry did not have a school building. Alright, so Byrne's School of Psychiatry, school here means type, by the way, right? Did not have a school building. A school building, this is simply an institution. Alright, so the first school means type, and the second is simply an institution. 5, the lecturer pointed out several important points. So the lecturer pointed out means the lecturer said, right? So pointed, said out several important points. Important points here means issues and ideas. Okay? So the first pointed means said, and the second one means issues or ideas. Okay? 6, she demanded to know the demand for psychiatrists. Okay, so she demanded means she asked to know the demand. The demand here means how many are needed. Okay? The rebel didn't like the government policies, so he rebelled. Right, so a rebel is a person against, right, a government, or simply a government idea, right? And rebelled means someone that acted against the government. Okay? 8, the judge didn't even try to try the men in a fair way. So the first try, so didn't even try here means attempt, right? To try, the second word try here means deal with in court, right? So deal with someone in court, right? So that was exercise A. Now, let's move on. I think we're going to have to actually read the text before we move on. So let's read the text. Here we have social games and relationships. Thomas Harris was born in California, USA in 1910. After graduating in medicine from the University of Arkansas, he moved to Washington, D.C. There he began his training in psychiatry in 1942. At the end of his studies, he joined the Navy, where he practiced psychiatry for several years. Then he left to take up a teaching post at his old university. He worked with Eric Berne, and in 1969 published I'm Okay, You're Okay, which developed one of Berne's ideas. After moving back to California, he took over from Berne as the director of the Transactional Analysis Society. He died in 1995. From Berne's theory, some psychiatrists believe that people were born with particular attitudes towards other people. However, Berne believed that everyone is born okay. At the time of their birth, babies feel good about themselves and about other people. Other people are okay too. Those relationships are type 1. However, as they grew up, Harris thought that people may change. As we can see in figure 1, 3 other relationships are possible, according to Harris. People may move to any of the other 3 boxes. He pointed out that nobody has the exact same relationship with everybody all at the time. Excuse me. But for most of the time, their relationships reflect that attitude to themselves and other people. For Harris, only relationship 1 is a healthy one. In this kind of relationship, people are happy to work with other people. They respect the contribution of another person, but they are also confident in their own contribution. There are problems in the other 3 cases. In relationship 2, a person does not respect other people or their contribution to work. In the 3rd relationship, a person feels stupid and inferior to other people, while in the final relationship, a person does not see the point of doing anything. Harris believed that there is hope for people with bad attitudes. In other words, the positions are not fixed. If you recognize that you do not value other people, you can try to find things to value in them. Then you can try to move to relationship 1. If you recognize that you do not value yourself, make a list of good things about yourself and try to accept that you are okay. If you think everyone is hopeless, do both the points above. Right, so that was the text, you guys. And here we have the figure from the I'm okay, you're okay model, right? So, okay, relationship type 1, type 2, not okay type 3, and type 4. So, in Harris's eyes, the only okay or good relationship type is type 1, alright? So, now that we got that out of the way, let's look at these statements. So, which of these statements do you agree with? So this will be up to you, right? Tick one of the following. So, I do a good job most of the time. The people around me do a good job too. I do a good job most of the time, but the people around me don't. I don't do a good job most of the time, but the people around me do. I think everyone does a poor job most of the time, including me. So this will be entirely up to you as a student. Don't worry. For me, I'd definitely say 2. No, this might come off as a surprise, but I'll definitely say I do a good job most of the time, but the people around me don't. Won't get into too much detail about that, right? So this will be up to you. Now let's move on. Here we have understanding the text, read the article opposite. Alright, so we got all of that. Let's answer some of the questions here. So, where did Harris train in psychiatry? So we'll just write down Washington, D.C. Yeah, that's about it. So we'll say Washington, D.C. Let me just add a full stop here. Where did he practice psychiatry? We'll say, I think it was in the U.S. Navy, right? So in the U.S. Navy. C, what were the connections between Harris and Byrne? We'll say that he worked with Byrne, then took over as director of the Transactional Analysis Society. I think that's what it was called. Let me write that in capital. Transactional Analysis Society. Let me write that in capital. Wow. So Transactional Analysis Society, right? What is the name of the model discussed in this article? It was called I'm okay, you're okay. So I'm okay and you're okay. All right? Let me add full stop here. Yeah. What did some people believe before Byrne's theory? They believed that people were born with particular attitudes, right? Turns out that was not the case. Attitudes. And full stop. F, which type of relationship do people have when they are young? They have type 1, which is the best type, right? What sometimes happens as people grow up? We'll say they may change to other types of relationship. Other types of relation. Wow, I wrote that wrong. So, relationship. Okay? Why is relationship type 1 healthy? We'll say because people are happy to work with other people, respect contribution of self and others. So we'll say people are happy to work with other people, and we'll also say respect contribution of self and others. Okay? I, how did Harris feel about the other types of relationships? We'll just simply say there are problems. Okay? J, how can you move from the other types to type 1? We'll probably say find things to value in people, right? We could also say make a list of good things about yourself, right? We can also say find things to value in people, including yourself. Okay? And full stop. So these were the questions, you guys. Now, let's take a look one more time. Where did Harris train in psychiatry? Washington, D.C. Where did he practice psychiatry? In the U.S. Navy. What were the connections between Harris and Byrne? He worked with Byrne, then took over as director of the Transactional Analysis Society. What is the name of the model discussed in this article? I'm okay, you're okay. What did some people believe before Byrne's theory? That people were born with particular attitudes. Which type of relationship do people have when they are young? Type 1. What sometimes happens as people grow up? they may change to other types of relationship. Why is relationship type 1 healthy? Because people are happy to work with other people, respect contribution of self and others. How did Harris feel about the other types of relationship? He simply thought that there are problems. How can you move from the other types to type 1? You've got to find things to value in people, make a list of good things about yourself, and find things to value in people, including yourself. Okay? So that was exercise C, you guys. Let's take a quick look at the vocab box here. Here we have attitude, demand, get on well, healthy, inferior, post, practice, reflect, relationship, respect, value. Okay? Now let's go to exercise D here. What do we have? Here we have match the statements to each type of relationship. Right, so now that we know the different types of relationships and what each one of them means, let's take a look. So here we have A. We're really getting on well with this. This is obviously 1, and that's the best relationship type. Let's give up. It's hopeless. We'll never be able to do it. This is definitely relationship type 4. Why am I so useless? You have to do everything for me. This is obviously a relationship where you hate yourself, so 3. And here, give it to me, I'll do it, where you think you're entitled and you're the one that has to do everything, and that's relationship type 2. Okay? So type 1, type 4, type 3, type 2 is the correct order. What else do we have? Alright, I think that's about it. Let's take a quick look at exercise E here. Developing critical thinking. Do you recognize yourself or another person in the descriptions of relationship types? Explain your answer. What I want you guys to do here is, do you think of yourself as someone in these descriptions of relationship types? So do you see yourself saying or thinking, how can you be so dumb or useless? I want people to do this for me because I simply can't. Or do you see yourself as someone that has to do everything for everyone? Or do you simply see yourself as someone that, hey, we're not going to be able to do this. Let's just give up, right? Fine, we'll do it later, or we'll not do it. Or are you the type of person that's like really good with everybody, the happy guy that everybody likes to be around? Find yourself, don't lie, and explain your answer. You can talk a little bit about yourself and why you feel the way you do. Okay? So now let's move on, you guys. Alright, you guys, so now moving on to the final page of this section here, we have this knowledge quiz, right, about relationships and names of people and other questions. So let's answer these questions together, right? So number 1, we have, what is an acquaintance? What do you guys think an acquaintance is? That's right, an acquaintance is a person you know from work, study, or family, right? What about a stranger? What is a stranger exactly? Well, a stranger is a person that you don't know. Okay? 3, what is a relative? Well, a relative is someone that's related to you, so someone from your family. Okay? Well, what is an adolescent? Well, an adolescent is a person between the ages of 13 and 19, aka basically a teenager. Okay? What is a barrier? Well, a barrier is something which stops you from doing something. Okay? Alright, what about a neighborhood? What is a neighborhood exactly? Well, a neighborhood is the area that you live in. That specific area that you live in, yeah, that's called a neighborhood. What is an excuse? Well, an excuse is a reason for doing something bad, right? What about stimulus? What is a stimulus exactly? Well, stimulus is something which makes you do something, okay? What is psychiatry? Number 9. Well, psychiatry is the study or the treatment of problems in the mind, Okay? What is an issue? Well, an issue is a problem. This one's pretty simple. Well, when might you forgive a person, right? Well, you can forgive a person if they have done something that's bad to you, okay? And when might you apologize to a person? Well, the exact opposite, when you have done something bad to them. 13, when might you blame someone? Well, you might blame someone when you think they have done something that's bad, right? 14, when might you avoid someone? Well, you should avoid someone when you think that they are angry with you. Well, when might you bow to someone? Well, you can do that when you meet a very important person. What about criticizing, you guys? When do you think it is appropriate to criticize someone? Well, we'll say when you think they have done something wrong and you tell them or have to tell them. Okay? When might you ignore someone? Well, you probably should ignore someone when you are angry with them or don't want to be friends with them anymore. 18. When might you take responsibility for something? Well, you should take responsibility when you have done something wrong and you admit it. You own up to it. So that is taking responsibility. Well, 19. How might you upset someone? Well, you can upset someone obviously by a number of ways, but by saying or doing something bad is the biggest one. How might you emphasize an apology? Well, you could use the words very. So, I'm very, very sorry, or terribly sorry, or really sorry. All of these are ways that you could really emphasize your apology with. How about supporting someone? How can you support, or how might you support someone? You could support someone financially, so with money, your attention, so time, or simply interest, right? Be there for them and talk with them. Why might you feel inferior to someone? I think all of us know the answer to that one. Well, because you think they are better, much more intelligent, or simply more beautiful or handsome than you. 23. Why might you rebel about something? Well, a lot of people rebel against something, especially when it comes to the government, is simply because they do not think it is fair. Right? Now, who wrote games people play in 1964? This one's pretty simple. Eric Berne. What about I'm okay, you're okay? So who wrote I'm okay, you're okay in 1969? That's correct. That was Thomas Harris. Alright? So these were the questions, you guys, here. And that will put an end to section, or the reading section. Right? So I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.